The laughter stung worse than the cold November wind. Man, Madison, did you dig that jacket out of a garage sale, or what? Johnny's voice cut through the chatter at the Willow Creek HOA picnic, sharp and mocking. The crowd around the folding tables, neighbors clutching paper plates of potato salad, chuckled, their eyes darting to Madison Carter. He stood by the grill, a lanky 32-year-old with tired eyes and a shy smile that barely held. His jacket, an old military green thing, hung loose on his frame, its sleeves frayed and a faded patch clinging to the shoulder. The name tag above the chest was unreadable, worn by time. Looks like it's from the Stone Age, Arya piped up, tossing her hair as she smirked. More laughter rippled, bouncing off the manicured lawns of the gated community. Madison didn't flinch. He never did. He'd learned to keep his head down, to let the jabs slide. But his fingers brushed the red and gold patch, a quiet gesture, like it anchored him. The jacket wasn't just old cloth to him. It was something deeper, something no one here knew. Smells like mothballs and regret, Rock added, leaning back in his lawn chair, his voice loud enough to draw Sansa's giggle from the dessert table. Madison stayed silent, flipping burgers, the sizzle of grease louder than his thoughts. He wore the jacket every year at this picnic, always with the same quiet pride. And every year, someone new found it funny. Johnny circled closer, his grin wide. Bet you found it in a dumpster. Huh? Come on, spill it. Madison's jaw tightened, but he only shrugged. It was my dad's, he said softly, barely audible over the music blaring from a portable speaker. The words hung there, ignored as Arya snorted. Your dad? What, was he a janitor in that thing? The crowd laughed again, but a few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, their smiles fading. Madison's eyes stayed on the grill, but his hand lingered on the patch, its threads rough under his fingertips. It meant something, something they couldn't guess. The picnic was Willow Creek's big event, a chance for the HOA to show off its perfect lawns and strict rules. Madison had moved here 2 years ago, a single guy in a handyman's truck, fixing leaky faucets and painting fences to pay his mortgage. He kept to himself, never argued with the HOA's endless notices, trim your hedges, no parking after 10 p.m. But the jacket? That was his one rebellion. He wore it like a badge, even when it drew sneers. That afternoon, the air buzzed with more than just gossip. The HOA had planned a special guest for the picnic, someone to give a speech about community pride. No one knew who. The board president, Sansa, had hinted at a big name, her voice smug as she passed out flyers. Madison didn't care. He just wanted to survive the day, without more jokes. But as he stacked burgers on a tray, a shadow fell over him. Nice effort, Madison, Sansa said, her tone clipped. But that jacket's an eyesore. Maybe next year, dress for the occasion. Her words stung, but he nodded, saying nothing. The laughter had quieted, but the stares hadn't. He felt them all, weighing him down. Then a hush spread. Heads turned toward the picnic's entrance, where a woman stepped onto the grass. Her presence hit like a wave. Tall, with broad shoulders and a crisp Marine uniform. Her medals gleamed under the sun. General Laura Bennett, the flyer had said. A 4-star Marine general, here in Willow Creek. Madison glanced up, then back at the grill. He didn't notice her eyes lock onto him or the patch on his jacket. General Laura Bennett's boots crunched on the grass as she moved through the picnic crowd. Conversations died down, replaced by whispers. Neighbors nudged each other, pointing at her medals, her sharp uniform, her steady gaze. Madison kept his head low, stacking burgers, unaware of her approach. The air felt heavier now, like something big was coming. Sansa, the HOA president, hurried to greet the general, her smile tight. General Bennett, we're so honored, she said, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. The general nodded, but didn't stop. Her eyes stayed fixed on Madison, on the faded patch on his jacket. Johnny noticed, elbowing Arya. What's she looking at him for? He muttered. Arya shrugged, smirking. Maybe she thinks he stole it. A few neighbors chuckled, but the sound faded fast. The general was close now, standing just a few feet from the grill. Madison felt the shift, like the air had gone still. He looked up, his heart thumping. That jacket, General Bennett said, her voice firm but not harsh. Where did you get it? The question hung there, heavy. I turned to Madison. He froze, burger spatula in hand, grease popping on the grill. It was my dad's, he said, his voice low, almost lost in the breeze. The general's eyes narrowed, studying the patch. Your dad. What was his name? Madison swallowed hard. James Carter. He was in the Marines. Long time ago. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sansa stepped forward, trying to take charge. General, why don't we? But the general raised a hand, silencing her. James Carter, she repeated, her voice softer now, almost like she was talking to herself. That patch, that's from the Shadowhawks. Madison blinked, confused. Shadowhawks, he asked. The general's gaze didn't waver. A special unit. Vietnam. Only a few ever wore that patch. Your dad, he was one of them. Madison nodded slowly, his fingers brushing the patch again. He never talked much about it. Died when I was a kid. The crowd was silent now, even Johnny and Arya. Rock leaned forward in his chair, his usual grin gone. General Bennett stepped closer, her shadow falling over Madison. I knew a James Carter, she said. He saved my squad once. Pulled us out of a bad spot in '68. That man was a hero. Madison's breath caught. He'd heard bits of his dad's stories, but nothing like this. The general's words felt like a weight, pressing down on him. You knew him, he asked, voice shaking. She nodded, her face softening. If it's the same man, yeah. I was just a private then. He taught me how to keep my head down and keep moving. The crowd gasped, some leaning closer, others whispering. Johnny's smirk was gone, replaced by wide eyes. But then Sansa broke in, her voice sharp. This is all very touching, but let's not get carried away. That jacket's old. Could be anyone's. Her words stung, and a few neighbors nodded, unsure. Madison's face flushed, his hand tightening on the spatula. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. The general turned to Sansa, her eyes like steel. This patch isn't just old cloth. It's earned. Blood and sweat went into it. Sansa faltered, her confidence cracking. Then, a new voice piped up from the crowd. Wait a sec, Arya said, standing up, her phone in hand. I just looked up Shadowhawks. It says here only 12 guys ever got that patch. And James Carter's name is on the list. The crowd erupted in murmurs, heads turning to Madison. He stood there, stunned, the spatula slipping in his grip. The general's eyes locked on him again, but she didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo. She held it out to Madison. Is this him? She asked. Madison took the photo, his hands trembling. It showed a young Marine, grinning, the same patch on his shoulder. It was his dad. But there was something else in the photo, a young woman in uniform, standing next to him. Madison's heart stopped. That's you, he whispered, looking at the general. She nodded, her voice low. We served together. And there's more to this story than you know. Madison's hand shook as he held the photo, his dad's young face staring back at him. General Laura Bennett stood close, her eyes steady but soft, like she was seeing a ghost. The Willow Creek picnic had gone quiet, the buzz of gossip replaced by a tense hush. Neighbors leaned forward, straining to hear. Johnny scratched his head, his usual cocky grin gone. Wait, so you're saying Madison's dad was like a big deal? He asked, voice low. General Bennett nodded. More than you know. Madison's throat tightened. He wanted to ask a million questions, but the words stuck. Sansa cleared her throat, stepping between them. This is all very dramatic, she said, her voice sharp. But we're here for a community event, not a history lesson. Madison, maybe take that jacket off? It's distracting. A few neighbors murmured agreement, their eyes flicking to the frayed sleeves. Madison's face burned, but he didn't move. The jacket stayed on, like it was part of him. General Bennett turned to Sansa, her gaze cold. This jacket's worth more than every lawn in this place, she said. You don't get it, do you? Sansa bristled, crossing her arms. I get that we have rules. This isn't a military base. It's Willow Creek. The crowd shifted, some nodding with Sansa, others looking at Madison with new curiosity. Arya, still clutching her phone, spoke up. Hold on. I found something else online. It says the Shadow Hawks were in some secret mission. Like classified stuff. James Carter got a medal for it. She held up her screen, showing a grainy article. The crowd gasped, heads turning to Madison. He felt their stares, heavy and unfamiliar. Rock stood up, his voice gruff. So, Madison's dad was a hero? And you never said nothing? Madison shrugged, his voice barely a whisper. Didn't think anyone cared. The words hit hard, and a few neighbors looked down guilty. General Bennett touched the photo in Madison's hand. Your dad didn't just get a medal, she said. He saved lives, including mine. But there's something else. She paused, her voice dropping. That mission, it cost him. He carried it with him, didn't he? Madison nodded slowly. He remembered his dad's quiet nights, staring out the window, hands gripping a coffee mug. He never talked about the war, but the weight was always there. He had nightmares, Madison said, voice cracking. Woke up shouting sometimes. I was too young to get it. The general's face softened. That patch wasn't just for bravery. It was for sacrifice. The crowd was silent, even Sansa. But then a new voice broke through. This is ridiculous. It was Johnny's dad, Greg, a burly guy who sat on the HOA board. He pushed through the crowd, glaring at Madison. You expect us to believe this? That jacket's probably fake. You're just a handyman, Madison. No offense, but heroes don't fix faucets. The word stung, and Madison's shoulders slumped. A few neighbors nodded, doubt creeping back. Sansa seized the moment. Exactly. We need proof. Anyone can claim a story. General Bennett's eyes flashed. Proof, she said, her voice like thunder. I'm standing here, telling you I served with James Carter. You want more? She reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded letter, its edges yellowed. This is from your dad, Madison. He wrote it after that mission. Said if anything happened to him, someone should tell his family the truth. Madison's heart raced. He took the letter, hands trembling. The crowd pressed closer, curious. Read it, Arya urged, her voice soft now. Madison unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the faded ink. Dear Laura, he read aloud, voice shaking. If I don't make it, tell my kid I did my best. Tell them about the Shadowhawks. Tell them I love them. He stopped, tears blurring his vision. The crowd was dead silent. General Bennett put a hand on his shoulder. He wrote that before our last mission, she said. He knew the risks. But there's more you need to know, about why he never came home the same. Before she could finish, Greg snorted. Nice story, but I'm not buying it. Madison, you've been late on your HOA dues twice. Heroes don't skip payments. A few neighbors laughed, breaking the moment. Madison's face fell, the letter trembling in his hand. But General Bennett's eyes locked on Greg. You want to talk about dues, she said. Let's talk about what James Carter paid, and what Madison's been carrying since. The picnic tables stood frozen under the late afternoon sun, paper plates forgotten as every eye fixed on Madison. He clutched the letter, his dad's words echoing in his head. General Laura Bennett's hand rested on his shoulder, her presence like a shield against the crowd stares. Greg's jab about HOA dues hung in the air, sharp and mean. A few neighbors snickered, but others looked uneasy, caught between doubt and the weight of the general's words. Madison's chest tightened, the old jacket suddenly feeling heavier. What do you mean, what I've been carrying? He asked, voice low, almost afraid of the answer. General Bennett's eyes softened, but her tone stayed firm. Your dad didn't just fight a war. He carried it home. That mission, the Shadowhawks, it changed him. The crowd leaned in, the silence thick. Sansa crossed her arms, her lips tight. General, with all due respect, this is a picnic, not a therapy session. Let's move on to the speech. Her voice was sharp, but it wavered, like she sensed she was losing control. Johnny shifted in his seat, his usual smirk gone. Hold up, he said, glancing at Madison. What changed him? Like what happened? The general ignored Sansa, her focus on Madison. Your dad led a raid in '68, deep in enemy territory. The Shadowhawks were sent to destroy a supply line. It went wrong. Ambush. Half the unit didn't make it. Madison's breath hitched. He'd heard his dad mention Vietnam, but never details. Just shadows in his eyes, late-night pacing. He never told me, Madison said, voice cracking. Just said to keep the jacket safe. General Bennett nodded. He wouldn't talk about it. None of them did. But that patch? It's not just a medal. It's a promise they made to each other. Arya, still holding her phone, piped up. I found something else. The article says the Shadow Hawks had a code. No one left behind. Is that true? The general's jaw tightened. True. Your dad lived it. He dragged me out of that ambush, took a bullet in the shoulder doing it. The crowd gasped, a low ripple of shock. Rock leaned forward, his voice gruff. Wait, Madison's dad got shot? And you're standing here because of him. General Bennett nodded. I owe him my life. And I'm not the only one. Madison's hand shook, the letter crinkling. He wanted to believe it, but Greg's word stung. Heroes don't fix faucets. He looked at the general. Why didn't he tell me? Why keep it secret? Before she could answer, a new voice cut through. Because he was ashamed. It was Mrs. Clara, an older neighbor who rarely spoke at HOA meetings. She stood up, her hands trembling. I knew your dad, Madison. Lived next door to him when you were a boy. He came back broken. Not proud. He said he failed his men. The crowd turned, stunned. Madison's heart sank. Failed, he whispered. Clara nodded, her eyes wet. He said he should have saved more. Carried that guilt every day. Sansa rolled her eyes. This is getting out of hand. Clara, sit down. We don't need old gossip. But Clara didn't budge. It's not gossip. I saw him cry once in his backyard holding that jacket. Said it reminded him of the men he lost. Madison's throat burned. He looked at the patch, its faded threads suddenly heavier. General Bennett spoke up. He didn't fail. He saved who he could. But guilt, it sticks. That's why he gave you the jacket. To carry the good, not the pain. The crowd was quiet, even Sansa. But then Greg stood again, his voice loud. This is all nice, but I checked the HOA records. Madison's dad was behind on dues, too. Sounds like a guy who couldn't handle things. The crowd murmured, some nodding. Madison's face flushed, anger mixing with hurt. He did his best, he said, voice louder now. He raised me alone. Fixed this whole neighborhood's pipes, roofs, you name it. And you're calling him a failure. Johnny looked down, guilty. Arya bit her lip, her phone forgotten. General Bennett stepped forward, her voice cutting through. Enough. James Carter was a hero. And I've got proof beyond this letter. She pulled out a small metal case from her pocket, opening it to reveal a medal, glinting in the sun. This was his. He sent it to me, said he didn't deserve it. But I kept it, for this day. Madison stared, his eyes wide. The crowd leaned closer, the air electric. There's one more thing, the general said, her voice low. Your dad left something behind in that jacket. Something you never found. The Willow Creek picnic felt like a pressure cooker. The crowd's eyes locked on Madison as he stood by the grill, the general's words ringing in his ears. Something hidden in the jacket? His fingers tightened on the letter, the medal in General Laura Bennett's hand glinting like a challenge. The neighbors whispered, some leaning forward, others throwing skeptical glances. Sansa tapped her foot, her voice cutting through. This is turning into a soap opera. General, let's get to your speech. We've got a schedule. But the general didn't budge, her gaze fixed on Madison. Check the inside pocket, she said, voice low but firm. Your dad left it for you. Madison's heart pounded. He fumbled with the jacket, the crowd watching every move. His fingers found a small, stiff pocket, sewn shut, hidden under the lining. It's stitched up, he said, confused. Johnny stood up, curious. Rip it open, man. What's in there? Madison hesitated, the jacket feeling sacred now. But the general nodded, urging him on. He tugged at the threads, the old fabric giving way. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed and brittle. He pulled it out, hands shaking. What is it? Arya asked, her voice soft, no trace of her earlier smirk. Madison unfolded it. his eyes scanning the handwriting. It was his dad's, the same slanted script as the letter. "It's a list," he said, voice cracking. "Names, dates, places." General Bennett's face tightened. "Read it," she said. Madison's voice wavered as he started. Michael Reed, June 68, Key San. Thomas Lee, July 68, Da Nang. Robert Hayes, he stopped, his throat closing up. These are his men. The ones he lost. The crowd went still, the weight of the words sinking in. Clara, the older neighbor, wiped her eyes. "He carried their names," she whispered. "All those years." Madison's knees felt weak. He looked at the general. "Why didn't he tell me? Why hide this?" General Bennett's voice softened. "He didn't want you to carry the guilt. Just the honor. Those names, they were his promise. To never forget." Rock shook his head, his voice rough. "Man, that's heavy. Your dad was out there saving lives, and we're giving you grief over a jacket." A few neighbors nodded, their faces softening. But Greg wasn't done. He crossed his arms, smirking. "Nice list, but anyone could write names on paper. My cousin's Marine. Says half these stories are made up." The crowd murmured, doubt creeping back. Madison's jaw clenched, anger flaring. "You think I'd lie about my dad?" he snapped, louder than anyone expected. "I grew up without him. He worked himself to death fixing your houses, Greg. And you're calling him a fake." The crowd hushed, stunned by Madison's fire. Johnny looked away, guilty. Arya touched his arm. "Ease up, Dad," she said. "This is real." Sansa stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Madison, calm down. We're a community. We don't need this drama." But her voice faltered as General Bennett held up the medal. "This isn't drama," she said. "This is truth. James Carter earned this Navy Cross. And there's more." She reached into her case, pulling out a small, tarnished dog tag. This was his, too. Found it after the ambush. He left it behind, said it wasn't his to keep. Madison took the dog tag, its cold metal heavy in his palm. His dad's name was etched deep alongside Shadowhawk's. Tears stung his eyes. "He never wore this," he said, voice breaking. "Kept it in a box. Said it wasn't his anymore." General Bennett nodded. He felt he failed them. But he didn't. And you're proof of that. The crowd was quiet, even Greg. But then a new twist hit. "Wait a minute," Sansa said, her eyes narrowing. "I remember something. Your dad, Madison, he was in trouble with the HOA. Left a debt when he died. You've been paying it off, haven't you?" The crowd gasped, heads turning. Madison's face paled. "That's private," he said, voice tight. Sansa pressed on. "If he was such a hero, why'd he leave you with his mess? Sounds like he wasn't so great." The words cut deep, and Madison's shoulders slumped. Johnny stood up, angry. "Sansa, that's low. The guy's dad was a hero. Give him a break." The crowd split, some nodding with Johnny, others whispering with Sansa. General Bennett's voice boomed. "Enough. James Carter's debt wasn't money. It was pain. And Madison's been paying it his whole life." She turned to him, her eyes fierce. "There's one last thing your dad left. It's not in the jacket. It's in this neighborhood." Madison blinked, confused. "What?" The general smiled, a rare softness. "You'll see. But first, you need to know why he stayed here in Willow Creek." The Willow Creek picnic was a tangle of emotions. The crowd caught between shock and doubt as General Laura Bennett's words hung in the air. Madison stood frozen, the dog tag cold in his hand, his dad's name etched like a scar. Sansa's jab about the debt stung, and the neighbors' whispers grew louder, some siding with her, others glancing at Madison with new respect. The general's hint about something in the neighborhood made his head spin. "What do you mean why he stayed here?" Madison asked, his voice rough with hope and fear. General Bennett scanned the crowd, her eyes sharp. "Your dad didn't just live in Willow Creek. He chose it, for a reason." The crowd leaned in, the tension thick. Johnny scratched his neck, confused. "What, like he liked the fancy lawns?" A few neighbors chuckled, but the general's stare silenced them. "Not the lawns," she said. "The people." Madison blinked, his heart racing. "What people?" Before she could answer, Clara, the older neighbor, spoke up, her voice shaky. I know why. James, your dad, he told me something once. Said Willow Creek was home to someone he owed. The crowd gasped, heads turning. Madison's eyes widened. Owed? Who? Clara hesitated, glancing at the general. He never said a name, just that he made a promise. Something about the war. Sansa rolled her eyes. More stories? Clara, you're not helping. This is an HOA event, not a mystery novel. But Arya cut in, her voice sharp. Let her talk, Sansa. This is bigger than your stupid rules. The crowd murmured, some nodding with Arya. Madison clutched the dog tag tighter, his mind racing. General Bennett stepped closer. Your dad stayed here to keep a promise to a man he lost. Michael Reed. First name on that list. She pointed to the paper in Madison's hand. He was from Willow Creek. Madison's breath caught. He looked at the list, Michael Reed's name staring back. From here, he whispered. The general nodded. Your dad felt he failed Michael. Got him killed in that ambush. So he moved here, raised you here, to make it right. The crowd was dead silent, even Greg. But then a new voice broke through. That's my uncle. It was Rock, standing up, his face pale. Michael Reed was my mom's brother. She used to talk about a Marine who visited her after the war. Gave her money, fixed her house. Was that your dad? Madison's jaw dropped. My dad helped your family? Rock nodded, his voice thick. Never knew his name. Mom said he showed up every year, wearing that jacket. Said he owed her brother his life. The crowd erupted in whispers, the air electric. Johnny's eyes were wide. Man, that's wild. Your dad was like a secret hero. Madison shook his head, overwhelmed. I didn't know. He never said. General Bennett's voice softened. He didn't want praise. He wanted to make things right. That's why he worked so hard, fixed everyone's houses. It was his way of paying back. Sansa's face twisted, her voice sharp. Paying back? He left a debt with the HOA. Thousands, Madison. You're still paying it. Heroes don't do that. Madison's anger flared. He did what he could. Raised me, worked day and night. You ever try living with nightmares, Sansa? The crowd hushed, feeling his pain. Arya touched Rock's arm, her voice soft. Your mom never told you the guy's name? Rock shook his head. She passed last year. Never got the chance. General Bennett held up a hand. There's more. Michael Reed had a kid. Your dad made another promise, to look out for her. Madison's heart stopped. A kid? Here. The general nodded, pointing to the crowd. She's standing right there. All eyes turned to a woman in the back, quiet until now. It was Lisa, a single mom who lived on Oak Street. She froze, her face pale. Me, she whispered. The crowd gasped, the twist hitting hard. Madison stared, his mind reeling. You're Michael's daughter? Lisa nodded, tears in her eyes. I never knew. Someone sent money every month, helped me pay for school. Was that your dad? Madison's knees buckled. He didn't know. General Bennett spoke, her voice steady. James Carter kept his promise, even when it broke him. But there's one last secret, Madison. It's about this neighborhood's land. The crowd leaned in, the air thick with anticipation. Sansa's eyes narrowed. What land? This is private property. The general smiled, a glint in her eye. Not always. And James knew why. The Willow Creek picnic felt like it was holding its breath, the crowd's eyes darting between Madison, General Laura Bennett, and Lisa, who stood trembling in the back. The general's words about the neighborhood's land hung heavy, a new mystery that made hearts race. Madison gripped the dog tag, his dad's promises piling up like weights on his chest. Sansa's face was red, her voice sharp. What do you mean, not always private? This is Willow Creek. Our deeds are clear. The general's smile was calm, almost knowing. Deeds don't tell the whole story. James Carter knew that. Madison's voice shook. What did my dad know about the land? The crowd leaned closer, the air thick with tension. Johnny whispered to Arya, "This is getting crazier." Arya nodded, her eyes wide. General Bennett scanned the crowd. This land wasn't always a fancy neighborhood. Back in the 60s, it was a farm, owned by Michael Reed's family. Rock's jaw dropped. My uncle's family? This was their land. The general nodded. Your mom never told you, because they lost it. Foreclosure. But James felt it was his fault. Michael died under his command. So he made a vow to get it back. The crowd gasped, whispers rippling. Lisa stepped forward, her voice soft. My dad's land? Here. Her eyes were wet, like she was seeing her past in a new light. Madison turned to her, stunned. My dad, he was trying to fix that. General Bennett's voice was steady. He worked every job he could, saved every penny, wanted to buy the land back for Michael's family. For you, Lisa. The crowd was silent, the weight of it sinking in. Clara wiped her eyes. James told me he was saving for something big. I thought it was for you, Madison. Not this. Madison's throat burned. His dad's late nights, his worn hands. It wasn't just for him. It was for a promise. But Greg broke the silence, his voice loud. Hold on. If this was Reed's land, why is it ours now? Sounds like a scam. A few neighbors nodded, doubt creeping back. Sansa seized the moment. Exactly. We paid for our homes. This is private property. James can't just claim it. Madison's anger flared. He wasn't claiming it. He was trying to make things right. His voice cracked, raw with pain. Johnny stood up, his tone firm. Greg, chill. The guy's dad was a hero. Show some respect. The crowd split, some clapping for Johnny, others muttering with Greg. General Bennett raised a hand, silencing them. James didn't want to take your homes. He wanted justice. He found proof the foreclosure was shady. A bank tricked the Reeds. The crowd gasped again, the twist hitting hard. Arya's eyes lit up. Like a cover-up? That's huge. Rock turned to Lisa, his voice low. You never knew? Mom never said nothing about a farm. Lisa shook her head, tears falling. I was a kid. All I knew was we moved a lot. But someone paid my school fees. Helped Mom with rent. Was that James? The general nodded. He sent what he could, even when he was struggling. Madison's heart ached. He looked at the jacket, its patch faded, but heavy with meaning. Why didn't he tell me? He whispered. General Bennett's eyes softened. He wanted you to grow up free of his pain. But he left clues. That list, the dog tag, they point to the truth. Sansa's voice cut through, shaky now. Truth? What truth? We built this community. You can't rewrite history. But Clara stood again, her voice firm. Sansa, I was here in the 70s. The bank that took this land? It was crooked. I saw families lose everything. The crowd murmured, the air electric. Greg scoffed. So what? That's ancient history. Madison's dad's gone. What's he gonna do now? Madison's fists clenched. I'll do what he couldn't, he said, voice steady for the first time. I'll find the truth. The crowd hushed, feeling his resolve. General Bennett pulled out a final item, a small, worn notebook. This was your dad's, she said, handing it to Madison. It's got everything. Names, dates, bank records. He was building a case. Madison took it, his hands trembling. The crowd leaned in, curious. Lisa stepped closer, her voice soft. He did all that for my family? The general nodded. And for you, Madison. But there's one last piece. It's not in the notebook. It's buried here on this land. Sansa's eyes widened. Buried? What are you talking about? The general's voice dropped, a new twist ready. James left proof. Something the bank never wanted found. The Willow Creek picnic was a sea of stunned faces, the crowd hanging on General Laura Bennett's words about proof buried on the land. Madison held the notebook, its pages heavy with his dad's fight against a crooked bank. The air buzzed with tension, neighbors whispering, some throwing nervous glances at Sansa and Greg. Madison's heart pounded, his dad's dog tag warm in his palm. Buried proof, he asked, voice steady despite the storm inside. What did my dad hide? General Bennett's eyes gleamed. Something the bank thought they destroyed. A contract, signed by Michael Reed's father, proving the land was stolen. The crowd gasped, the twist hitting like a thunderclap. Lisa's hand shook, her voice barely a whisper. My grandpa's contract? Here. The general nodded. James found it. Hid it where no one would look, under the old oak tree by the community pond. Johnny's eyes widened. That big tree? The one the HOA wanted to cut down. Arya jumped in, her voice excited. Yeah, Sansa said it was an eyesore. Madison fixed its roots last year. The crowd turned to Sansa, whose face paled. That's just maintenance, she stammered. We didn't know. Greg scoffed, crossing his arms. Sounds like a fairy tale. You got proof of this contract, or just more stories? Madison's anger boiled over. You mocked my dad, Greg. Called him a failure. But he was fighting for this place while you complained about dues. The crowd murmured, some clapping, others nodding. Rock stood up, his voice loud. Madison's right. My uncle's land got taken, and his dad tried to fix it. What have you done, Greg? The crowd roared, the tide turning. Sansa raised her hands, desperate. This is nonsense. We're a community, not a courtroom. But General Bennett stepped forward, her voice like steel. It's not nonsense. I helped James hide that contract, and I know exactly where it is. She pointed to the pond, its water glinting in the fading light. Who's with me? Johnny jumped up. I'm in. Arya followed, then Rock, then Lisa. Neighbors stood, one by one, until half the picnic was on its feet. Madison led the way, his dad's jacket feeling lighter now. At the oak tree, he dropped to his knees, digging with his hands. The crowd gathered, phones out, recording. Sansa and Greg stayed back, their faces tight. After minutes of dirt and sweat, Madison's fingers hit metal, a small rusted box. He pried it open, revealing a plastic-sealed contract, yellowed but clear. Michael Reed, he read, voice shaking. Owner, Willow Creek Farm, 1962. Lisa gasped, tears streaming. That's my grandpa's signature. The crowd erupted, clapping, some cheering. Johnny slapped Madison's back. Man, your dad was a legend. General Bennett held up the contract. This proves the bank forged documents. James was building a case to get justice for the Reeds. And for all of you. She turned to the crowd. This neighborhood's built on stolen land. Your dues? Part of that debt. The crowd hushed, the truth sinking in. Sansa's voice cracked. We didn't know. The HOA just followed the rules. Madison stood, his eyes fierce. Rules? You fined me for my mailbox, my grass, my dad's debt. But he was fighting for what's right. What were you fighting for? The crowd cheered louder, Sansa's face crumbling. Greg looked away, silent. Lisa stepped forward, touching Madison's arm. Your dad helped me my whole life. I owe him everything. Madison's throat tightened. We'll make this right, he said. For your family. For mine. General Bennett raised the contract high. This goes to court. The Reeds deserve their share. And James Carter deserves his name cleared. The crowd roared, veterans in the back, saluting Madison. He stood tall, the jacket no longer a joke, but a badge of honor. Sansa and Greg slipped away, their power gone. As the crowd chanted his name, General Bennett leaned in. Your dad would be proud, Madison. You finished his fight. Madison nodded, tears falling. He wore the jacket with his head high, no longer the handyman they mocked. The lesson was clear. What looks old or broken can carry a legacy worth fighting for. Never judge a man by his jacket, because behind the fray is a story that can change everything.